So guys, I just got out of class and we just received word that there's been a train derailment right where we normally film, actually. It's in the vicinity of the Eagleville Dam, a little bit farther north up the tracks and along the lake bed, just south of Plains Road, where we did a couple episodes not too long ago.
The train had derailed here in a farmer's field just along the bank of the Willimantic River. 13 cars had gone off the rails and several had actually ended up in the river itself. Even more concerning was that 6 of these cars were carrying liquefied petroleum gas, or LPG, which is very dangerous if it was to leak. A shelter-in-place order had been given for the surrounding half-mile and drone flights had been banned, but I still thought there might be a few places we could catch a glimpse of the train, so I headed to take a look at the scene. My first stop was the Eagleville Dam, a town park about a mile downriver of the derailment. As soon as I arrived, I could hear the rumble of an idling diesel engine, and sure enough, the orange colors of the railroad's locomotives could be seen through the trees. A little further up the road, I was able to get a better view of the engines. Both were still on the rails, as it was only the last 13 cars in the train that had derailed. Also on site was a crew from a local news station. The derailment was without a doubt the biggest thing to happen in town for years, and so every local news agency was now trying to get a shot of the train. It was at this site that I was also able to get my first look at the derailment itself. Far up the lake bed, a line of black tank cars could be seen before it seemed to fall off down toward the river. Even from here, it looked like quite a few of those tank cars were fully off the tracks and into the water. I wanted to get a closer look, so I headed down to River Park in Coventry, just outside of the shelter-in-place zone. By looking down the river, I could see many flashing lights from emergency vehicles responding to the scene. Given the nature of the accident, emergency personnel from all across the state had been called in to help stabilize the wreck. I could also get a clearer view of the wreck itself, as through the trees I could clearly see the line of tank cars as it toppled off the bank and into the water. While I was unable to get any closer, a news crew from WSFB was able to get inside the shelter-in-place zone and capture this shot of the derailment, clearly showing the long string of tank cars fully off the rails. Also, Connecticut officials released several photos of the site that were distributed by NTNH, showing the extent of the derailment from up close. It was clear that this was going to take a while to clean up, but just how long was still unknown at this point. Over the next day, NBC News reported that large cranes had been brought on site and most of the tank cars had been hauled off the tracks and stabilized. Unfortunately, when I went to go take a look at them that evening, I discovered that my filming site at Plains Road was now blocked off, so I was only able to capture a few shots from near the Eagleville Dam as the crew kept on working through the night. The next day, temperatures had plummeted to the coldest it had been all winter, but crews kept working to clear the wreck. With all the cars off the tracks and stabilized, they now began to repair the tracks to allow trains access to the site. I hiked through the snow on a trail that brought me across the lake from the site, where I was able to see them working on repairing the track. Excavators were bringing in huge sections of pre-built track and carefully placing these sections end to end before they would be connected together to allow the track to quickly be rebuilt. By the next day, Sunday, the drone flight ban had been lifted, so I tried to take off from the Eagleville Lake to get an aerial look at the wreck. Unfortunately, the only thing I was able to see from here was the train's engines, now back at the derailment site after having dropped off their train in Willimantic several days earlier. On Monday, it was announced that the process of unloading the LPG from the derailed tank cars had begun. Fox 61 reported that new tank cars had been placed on the newly rebuilt track and gas from the derailed cars was being pumped into them, before any excess gas left in the cars was then flared off. The process was expected to take about a week and a half, and the shelter-in-place order would not be lifted until all the gas was gone. Over the next week and a half, I made many trips to a hill in Coventry overlooking the lake to fly the drone and see what was going on, but without close access to the site, all I was able to capture were a few grainy shots of the transloading process. However, on February 17th, 12 days after the derailment had originally happened, I received word that the shelter-in-place order had been lifted, and I could finally get a good look at the derailment site. So, as soon as I got out of class, I hopped in the car and headed to go and check it out. Alright, so guys, as you can see, we did find a spot next to the road I could quickly pull off and just grab a quick shot. You can see right behind me here is where the derailment happened. You can see right now they got an engine sitting there along with a tank car, and all those tank cars that derailed are now sitting in that farm field. And they're all empty now, except possibly the one that has the fire burning on top of it. That's a flare going just to burn off the excess gas. Yeah, it looks like cleanup's underway here. I'm not going to stay for too long because I am kind of double parked on a little back road, so I don't want to get in anyone's way. But yeah, nice to see it up close finally. It looks like they're making pretty good progress. I'm going to try and come back hopefully later in the week with a better camera than my phone, and we'll get a bit of a better look at this when the weather's better. Later in the week, when the weather was better for drone flights, I went back to the derailment site and flew a drone a little ways down the Willimantic River to get a closer look at the site from the air. While I still didn't want to get too close to the derailment site, I was able to see a lot more from this angle than I could have previously. It looked like the flaring process was now complete, and a tank car was sitting on the tracks with an engine attached to it. This engine is actually a fairly rare unit. It's one of two similarly painted units in service of various local railroads owned by the parent company Genesee in Wyoming, and it honors veterans and service members. There didn't seem to be much activity at the site at this point. Nothing changed for the next week, too, as a snowstorm came through that dropped about a foot of snow and appeared to largely halt progress. However, on March 2nd, I heard that Route 32 had been temporarily closed again to bring in a large crane to start removing tank cars from the scene, so I again headed down to the derailment site to get a closer look. Alright, so we're now right next to where the train derailed, overlooking the field it's derailed, and you can see behind me here there's a giant white crane that they just brought in. They originally had, I believe it was either 2 or 3 of these in to help pick up the cars, and apparently they've brought one back in to help get the cars out of the field now. Doesn't look like they're doing anything today. I've heard that the plan is that they're either going to lift some of the cars onto the rails or some onto lowboys and haul them out of here. But yeah, I think that's all it looks like they're going to be doing for today, but we'll make sure to come back tomorrow and hopefully we can catch them lifting one of the cars. Unfortunately, the weather was terrible the next day and I was unable to fly, but 2 days later I heard that a second crane had arrived and cars were being lifted back onto the tracks. Unfortunately, by the time I could get there, they had just finished lifting the last car into a specialized flat car to be towed into Willimantic, but I was still able to get a few shots at the end of the process. It was a very impressive operation to witness. 2 huge track cranes would pick up each car and then place it on the specialized flat car, and then each car would be hauled one by one off the scene. After the cranes had finished placing the tank car, I headed a little ways down the road to get a closer look at the scene. Hello everyone, so as you can see we're back at the derailment site for what is likely to be our last day of filming here, because as you can see almost all the tank cars behind me are now gone. There's only one left. It's sitting on a specialized flat car hooked up to a couple engines, and they just finished loading the last tank car on here using those couple big white cranes right as we got here. So I think pretty much they're going to haul this out, take the cranes out of here, and pretty much their cleanup operation should be done. Sure enough, this marked the end of the cleanup operations outside of a few smaller projects. In total, it had taken almost 4 weeks to finish the job, but all things considered, it had gone very well. No major leaks occurred in any of the cars, with the only leak being from a car carrying animal fat that was quickly cleaned up. The only injury reported in the derailment and in the entire cleanup process was one worker who slipped on the ice during the first few days of the operation, and no lasting environmental damage was caused. As local officials often reiterated, this was a disaster, but considering how much worse this could have gone, everything ended very well. At this time, an official report on the train wreck has not been released, but the railroad has said their initial investigations indicated that a broken train wheel caused the wreck. It's also worth noting that the New England Central previously has had a very good safety record, so it's likely that this was just a freak accident and not some seriously preventable issue. All in all, I'm just glad that everything has ended okay and no major damage happened to the environment or, most importantly, any people. As a local resident, I would also like to thank all the first responders and cleanup crews who kept everyone safe and got this cleaned up despite some very challenging conditions. Operations on the line are now back to normal. Just a few days after filming the last tank car being removed, I caught train 608 running back north to Palmer, just half a mile north of the derailment site. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave me a like or a comment to let me know that you enjoyed the video, and maybe even subscribe to help the channel grow and make sure you don't miss out on the next one of these videos. If you have any more information on this derailment you'd like to share or noticed any errors that I made, please let me know in the comments below so I can add it to the video description or pin the comment. As always, thanks for watching everyone and have a great day.